The tally hall opens at first light because the Varen like their cruelty done in good lighting. Glass roof, white floor, the sun coming through clean as water, throwing long gold rectangles across the queue lines painted on the tile. Nothing about the place looks like what it does. You could photograph it for a recruitment notice. People have before. I have worked the Dockside 9 loading floor for 11 years, since before the ordnance came down from orbit with their scanners and their schedules and their talk of civic stability. They didn't arrive as conquerors, not in any way you could point a weapon at. They arrived as administrators, and within a season the war was over and the paperwork had begun, and the paperwork has never once stopped since. Every cycle ends the same way. At the 18th hour a tone sounds through the terminal, low enough to feel in your teeth before you hear it, and every resident files into the hall to surrender the wristband they were issued that morning. The band goes into the slot. The slot reads it. Whatever memory the ordnance has flagged that day as a threat to civic order, grief that runs too long, anger that doesn't fade on schedule, love that gets in the way of a man showing up to his shift on time, gets pulled out of you while you sleep, clean as a tooth. In the morning you wake up lighter. A fresh band waits on the dispensary rail with your name printed across it. You don't remember what the old one cost you, and the hall doesn't ask you to. That's the whole design. Nothing to mourn if you can't remember what's missing. I was flagged once myself, 4 years back, the week after the annexation review board finished going through what was left of the resistance rosters. I don't know what they took. That's the nature of it. You can't miss a key you don't remember having. They flagged Imke the year after that. I still have the version of her that existed before. I carry it the way you carry a coat you can't take off, her hand in mine on the loading dock catwalk, the manifest clock on the wall behind her reading out the hour in those old amber digits, the smell of solvent and hot metal from the freight bay below us, and her telling me, calm as anything, that she wasn't afraid of the Varen auditors, only of being made to forget she'd said so. She laughed when she said it. I remember that she laughed. 6 hours later they came for her with a medical scanner and a clipboard and a very polite voice, and when she came back out she asked me, with real warmth, who I was to her. We are still married on the paper the ordnance keeps. She thinks I'm a friend who helps her carry crates, and she is kind to me the way she is kind to everyone, which is its own particular cruelty if you let yourself think about it too long. I have learned not to. I memorized the clock before they took her inside. 4:1709. 17 minutes and 9 seconds past 4 in the afternoon, the last second I had a wife who knew it. I am not a clever man. I never went looking for a way to break their system because I understood early that their system cannot be broken, only outlasted in places it isn't looking. The scanners read the printed compliance code on each wristband, a fresh one, generated new every cycle, tied to that day's date and that day's flags. They do not read the ink underneath it. Nobody had ever needed them to. I found an old dock stamp in a decommissioning bin 11 years ago, the kind freight handlers used before the ordnance digitized the manifests, 6 wheels of rotating numerals you set by hand. I kept it wrapped in a rag at the bottom of my locker. Every morning since the day Imke came back not knowing me, before the hall opens, before the new wristband even finishes printing its code, I have set those 6 wheels to 41709 and pressed it into the paper, under my sleeve, where the scanner's beam never has reason to look. 1095 mornings. I know the number because I have written it that many times. I was not trying to prove anything. I want to be honest about that, because the auditor who caught me kept asking why, as if there had to be a strategy in it, and there wasn't. I did it because some mornings it was the only thing I could control, and because some part of me believed that if I stopped, the moment really would be gone, the way Imke's memory of it already was. Auditor HFY ran the seasonal density check on a Tuesday. She was thorough in the particular way the Varen are thorough, not suspicious, just exact, the way water is exact about finding the lowest point in a room. She had her scanner wand over my wrist for the routine pass when she stopped, tilted her head the way they do when something doesn't match its expected curve, and asked me to hold still. She said the ink density under the printed code didn't read as new. She ran it again. She asked for the previous day's discarded band from the incinerator log, which by policy is kept 4 cycles before destruction, and held the 2 side by side under the chamber light. 41709, both of them. She pulled the prior 2 cycles, then 10. Then, because the Varen do not do anything by half measure once they've started, she pulled the full incineration record going back as far as the system retained it, which turned out to be every wristband I had surrendered for 3 years. She looked up at me with an expression I had never once seen on a Varen face in 11 years of watching them. Not anger, not suspicion. Something closer to the look a man gets reading a measurement that contradicts a law he was certain was unbreakable. This number has not changed in 1,095 cycles, she said. No, I said. The reset is designed to prevent exactly this. Continuity is the thing it removes. It removes what it can find, I said. It was never looking at my hands. I told her what the number was, because there didn't seem to be a reason left to hide it. 17 minutes and 9 seconds past 4 in the afternoon, the day my wife last knew who I was. I told her I had set the stamp myself every morning since, before the scanner woke up, because it was the only part of that day I still had the materials to keep. She didn't write me up. I want to say that plainly, because for a long moment I expected her to, and some old tired part of me had already made peace with it. Instead, she did something with her data slate I didn't understand until she explained it to me twice. The ordinance, for all its talk of erasure, keeps one rule sacred above the reset itself, a record that remains internally consistent across a minimum threshold of cycles, verified by independent instances of authentication, must be entered into the permanent administrative ledger, and is thereafter exempt from alteration. It exists to protect their own bureaucracy from itself, so that no auditor can quietly rewrite history behind another auditor's back. It was never written with grief in mind. It does not care what kind of continuity it's protecting, only that the continuity is real and the proof of it is unbroken. Mine had been unbroken for 3 years, witnessed daily by a scanner that had never once flagged it, because it had never once changed. She logged it, 41709 under my name, under hers, sealed into the permanent ledger before the cycle's 18th hour tone could reach the hall. She told me, in that flat clinical voice they use for everything, that it could not be reset now. Not by her, not by her superiors, not by the system itself, without violating its own foundational law. I didn't ask her to fix what had been taken from MK. I understood, standing there, that this wasn't that, it was smaller, and it was mine, and after 3 years of mourning spent guarding a number nobody else could see, it was the first thing the ordinance had ever handed back to me instead of taken. I walked out onto the dock floor with my sleeve down and the 18th hour tone sounding behind me, and for the first time since the day the clock read 41709, I didn't have to do anything to keep it. It was already kept. Somewhere in their ledgers, untouchable, a machine built to erase me was now required by its own law to remember. I went back to loading crates. Imke passed me on the catwalk an hour later and asked, the way she always does, if I needed a hand with the heavy end. I told her I had it. She smiled like she always does, like we just met, and I smiled back, because some mornings that's still enough, and because for the first time in 3 years I knew exactly where the rest of it had gone.